very, very, very few brave representatives in our Senate and our House, namely Jesse White, who...
Thank you, Jesse White!
Thank you, Jesse White. He's not in there, he's downtown, but that guy's a hero. And the industry, I'm telling you, is going to try to beat his butt the next time he runs for office. So, you know, whatever on that, but he had to discover, and others had to discover that they weren't reporting all the results. So, okay, no problem, you forgot to tell us. Can you tell us now? No, you folks can't have that information. You're the boss, folks. I'm the boss.
Right.
You're the boss. They're not the boss. If they do a test with your money and your resources and you want the results, why in God's name can't you have it?
Right.
I don't understand it. I don't understand it. We also asked that PA provide justice for those harmed by the oil and gas industry, but I would add, as I just met Diane here today, not to embarrass you, but I've been friends with Facebook with her for a while, and I finally got to hear her story, and it's like, you had to leave your home because somebody built a freaking factory farm next door? There's a list called by the PA Alliance for Clean Air and Water by another friend named Jenny Lysak, and she did it on her own.
Yep.
Why? Because EPA and DEP don't have a list of everyone who's been hurt by fracking.
Yeah.
Right.
Why don't our employees who are supposed to watch out for the environment have a list of people who are hurt by this? Why does some lady have to open up her laptop and start typing? She types it in a Word document. She has over 1,200 folks so far across the U.S. who've been hurt by that. Too many of them are from PA.
Yep.
Too many of them have simply chosen to abandon their home. I can't live here with my kids anymore. I'm going to leave my house.
Yep.
That's nuts. And DEP should at least address, at the very least, take that list from that private citizen who's done it on their own and follow up on the Pennsylvania ones, though.
Right.
That's their job. That's what I pay them for. That's what you used to pay me for.
Right.
And lastly, we asked that they reopen the Office of Energy and Technology Deployment to develop solar, wind, and other renewable technologies. Folks, you'll hear from all types of people that say, I just want to hear my federal representative give an open house. He's a pretty cool guy. His name's Charlie Dent. I was impressed with a lot of what he said, but someone asked him, actually Rachel's husband asked him about renewable energy. Why can't we either have a carbon tax or talk about that, or soak some more money in renewable energy? And you know what he said? The same old talking point. Government's place is not to pick winners and losers, right? Well, I disagree with that because I'm a little left of center, in case you can't tell. But those who are more conservative, that's fine. If you feel that way, that's fine. Then let's not pick winners and losers. My government, instead, PA, exactly, Royal Dutch Shell, is getting $1.65 billion in tax credits. That comes out of all your pockets.
Yep.
Somebody's got to pay that loss.
Say that again, please.
Steve, how much?
$1.65 billion in tax credits to build an ethane cracker. Whatever that is, it turns ethane into something even worse that we can't sustain. And that's fine, you know, if government wants to do that, maybe it'll create jobs. Maybe it's what we the people want. But then you can't turn around and not put any money into solar, any money. You close the department here that's supposed to promote that because we don't want to pick winners and losers. It's hypocrisy. It's bull. It'd be one thing if it was working. If it was working, they'd have a case. It's not working. Penn Future on April 18th just announced the Commonwealth's unemployment rate, quoting Penn Future, of 8.1% continues to exceed the national rate of 7.7% and has increased from 7.6% a year ago. During that same time, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that unemployment in 37 states and Puerto Rico has decreased, not in Pennsylvania. So obviously our $1.65 billion that we're going to give Shell is not helping me get work. It's not helping you get work. Who is it helping? It's helping campaign donors to our elected representatives.
Amen.
Neither of the two parties allowed at the table are guiltless on this. I'm sorry. If either party wants to say, look across the aisle at those crooks taking all the money, pull their campaign finance reports. Don't listen to me. Pull them yourself. Pull the Democratic candidates, pull the Republican candidates' finance reports. That's what's done. That's all I have.
Thank you, Steve. And Steve touched on just something real quick. You know, we are not, like I said, right here above shale. In York County, we're not. But there are lots of other problems, too, that need addressing. It's not just this area where it lacks enforcement or policy direction. Diane here, victim from factory farms, her farm, 2 wells contaminated. All 4 of them had to move, doctor's orders. Can't sell a farm. Who wants to buy a farm with 2 bad wells? For who? For Hatfield? For Smithfield? For who? For who? Barbara didn't know I was going to do this. This is my friend. This is my friend Barbara.
Okay.
Barbara has had an issue and has had to leave her home. Another PA family with.
Well, sewage malfunction since like 1980. The Sunoco gas tanks left in the ground, never emptied or anything, and which leached and contaminated the ground. I found papers that prove this. DEP did come and pump what was left out in them in January of 2012. But I mean, this gas station closed down in the early 80s. Come on. And there's children still living on this. So yeah, I finally got my story in the Bedford Gazette when I went to the Bedford County Commissioners meeting. I mean, that's over 33 years of contamination going into Boiling Spring Run, and there's children living on this known contamination, a health hazard, that the township filed in April of 2012. And it's against the manager. Now, he did break a sewage pipe beside my home and didn't tell us for over 2 months, and we were really sick for the longest time. It's been a long 2.5 years that I can actually come and help get this information out, help to, help show that there's no really regulation or anybody's not helping. They're trying a lot of covering up here. You know, like she said, there are good people in DEP and EPA, but their hands are tied. So I did get some information that some people has helped me. But yeah, I mean, there's children living on this, and my son drank the water there. It's not good.
She had a picture of a pipe going into a stream.
Oh yeah.
Salt, yeah.
With sewage coming out of it. That's a violation of the
Clean Water
Act.
Among other things.
Where are you? It's 20 years.
Yeah. Human decency.
Of 2000.
It's insanity.
Since August of 2010, they said it was capped, but I found information that it's been flowing downstream since last summer of 2012, so it's still contaminating this trout stream.
So it's more than that. This is my friend.
It's more than that.
This is our next speaker. This is my friend Jerry Lee Miller.
Yay.
Jerry Lee Miller got very involved in this fight. We were just talking about this. He heard a presentation that Steve was at with us. We did at F&M.
The speaker.
Right?
Yeah.
And this man caught on fire and has taken the environmental by storm. He is like a leader in the pack. So we are so thrilled to have you with us. Jerry's part of the Hive. It was Transition Lancaster, but it has been morphed into.
Yeah, we morphed into a new group. Yeah.
So Jerry Lee Miller from Lancaster.
Well, thank you for your kind words, but actually I'm going to have to run a lot to catch up with Maria. She's so far ahead of me.
Yeah.
And I appreciate all your passion and your energy and the fact that you care so much that you go out and you know the people who've been harmed. You know their names. That's amazing. And I just appreciate that so much. And I just put together just now, Steve, that you were the civil engineer that spoke at that meeting.
Yeah.
So, it just dawned on me. But anyhow, last night, Bill McKibben and 350.org released a new film called Do the Math. And maybe some of you watched it. The first scene, we see Bill, and he's in his long white coat and his baseball hat, and I'm talking like Bill now. He talks so slow when he really has this deep conviction, and sometimes it takes a while for the words to flow. But you can see him being led from in front of the White House, his hands cuffed behind his back. And then you begin to hear Bill McKibben's voiceover. That's my favorite part of his film last night, although the whole thing was great. He says, speaking about himself, like most people, I'm not an activist by nature. like most people, my greatest desire is not to go out and fight the system. That's not what his choice was, but then he goes on to tell us that the situation is so dire that just informing people is not enough. You have to take on the opponent. You have to be right in their face. You have to be willing to take whatever actions are necessary to become effective. For me, I was a letter writer for quite a few years, writing the letters to the editor on a variety of subjects. But I became something more when I saw the movie Gasland. And then it was a few months later that two women, Elaine Ash and Brenda Kaufman, who met each other at the filming or the showing of Gasland in Lancaster, when they came together, they said, we've got to do something. They formed an organization, these two women, and they sponsored this forum at Franklin and Marshall College. I attended. It was a turn-away crowd. People couldn't get in. Maria was one of the speakers. Steve was one of the speakers. But the people that really motivated me the most were Maria and Ralph Kisberg. And the reason why, and I wrote to both of them, the reason why is because they were both citizens who saw a need and they organized. They created an organization. They created something out of nothing to respond to the need, and that was just such a powerful fact to me. And I realized that there was more that I was going to have to do, and I did start doing some more things. I've since become friends with Elaine Ash, one of the women who coordinated that, and Brenda Kaufman. But I want to tell you, Elaine is a great researcher. She is a tireless researcher, she's a brilliant woman. And right now she's passionate about the intentions of piping and exporting liquid natural gas. And she's been doing a lot of research, and our organization, Hive of Planet Loving Activity, is sponsoring a night with Elaine on May 15th in Lancaster. But that's ahead of where we are today. So like I said, I wrote to both Maria and to Ralph, and I said, I'm going to have to do something. I thank you for your example. And so I made a pledge, and my guess is that everybody else here at some point has made some kind of a pledge. Maybe it took pig manure and a mason jar, but but you got to that point, and thank you for living with that. That was a good story. I don't usually wear a tie anymore, but I'm wearing my what I call my Citizens Action tie, activist tie. I wore this tie when I was arrested in front of the White House in December of 2011 to say to the president, we cannot allow the tar sands pipeline, the XL pipeline, to come down across our international border from Alberta and to pump that dirty tar sands oil, that bitumen, across the Ogallala Aquifer and down to refineries in the Gulf of Mexico. We can't do that. So I'm wearing this tie today because this is a talk about citizen activist. I was inspired by citizen activist, and I'm trying to become one and to inspire others, just as you all are. I wore a tie for 30 years as a pastor in the Church of the Brethren. Every Sunday I wore a tie. Several days during in between Sundays I wore ties. But I don't wear them anymore except on special occasions, and this seemed to me like an occasion that warranted it because it's part of the story. Now, in my years as a pastor, whenever I spoke, I always had a text from which I spoke from. So I asked myself a question. If I had a text for this talk this afternoon, what would it be? And immediately the story of Esther from the Hebrew Bible came to mind. And I thought of the words of Mordecai to Esther. Esther was in a very unique situation. She had the opportunity. She had the ear of the king, and nobody else did. She had an opportunity to speak on behalf of her people, on behalf of their health, safety, welfare. The king was going to destroy them. And Mordecai, her uncle, said to his niece Esther, he said words something like this: who knows but you have come to your position for such a time as this. And our time is Earth Day today, 2013. We can't go back in a time capsule or a time machine and change some of those things that we wish we could. You know, the genie is out of the bag, so to speak. This is our time. This is our time. In our position, we are citizens with a voice. We have that voice. We have the opportunity to speak, to write letters, to talk to whoever will listen to us, and especially to get the attention of those in power. Citizens who know there's a danger and who have this duty thrust upon them. Maybe we didn't want to become an activist. Most people don't, like Bill McKibben said. Most people don't want to have to challenge the system. You know, we have other things we'd like to do with our lives, but who knows? Who knows but what we've been given this position for such a time as this. I was going to mention those points which everybody else has already mentioned, why we're here, so I will omit those and simply say thank you. Thank you for what you are doing, each one of you, and for whatever you're going to do from this point on. We are allies, we are workers together, and we are the ones who, whether we've chosen or not, we're the ones who realize something must be done. Yeah. There may be people smarter than us or more talented than us, but we're the ones that realize something must be done, so let's do it.
Yeah. I'm going to introduce, this is a gentleman who actually moved, him and his lovely wife. They left their home, and he would like to say something. So we're so pleased to have you, you know, someone who has been affected like that.
I wasn't planning on talking, so bear with me. We used to live in Susquehanna County until July. Susquehanna County, DEMIC is where DEMIC is. There was just two disjointed things I wanted to mention. The name Department of Environmental Protection, I understand the need for that name protection. I'll be glad when it's Department of Environmental Enhancement. The other thing is, we are a water state. Like you think of Minnesota, you know, land of 10,000 lakes. Alaska has all the frozen, you know, glaciers, water and glaciers. And yet I think Pennsylvania is either number 1 or number 2 in total length of streams, creeks, and rivers. Like we are a water state, we are the water state. We are a water state. I'm going to go into a few negative things about where we were, but this is one of the reasons that these companies were just jumping up and down when the Marcellus shale was decided to be worked on, is because all this water is here. Right. They can just take the water and do it and use it because we have so much. We are the water. We are a water state. We don't get enough credit for that. Well, not really credit. It's just the way it is. Just a couple of negative things that we saw living in Susquehanna County until July of last year. We moved because of it, and then there was a secondary reason, especially for me, but the main reason was moving out of the area. In DEMIC, we have friends. They lived here, up here. They were drilling, and they had, this was in the beginning days of it, and they had the impoundment, I think that's the proper name.
Impoundment.
And these people's goats, which were part pets, part livestock, started having bad problems and then dying, and eventually it was found. Well, it was always known that this impoundment place was leaking, but nobody took it seriously as if it meant anything. So we know people directly as friends who've had problems with this. The industry, as I saw coming into our area, everything they tried was an experiment, and they goofed it the first time around, and they continue goofing it, but they always goofed it the first time around with the casings or this impoundment thing. When the explosion hit at the first compressor station in northeast Pennsylvania in Springville, Lathrop, like the blast was felt 3 miles away. And I noticed a couple things about it. The pictures that were taken from, you know, the media pictures were all from a distance. They didn't allow them to go in. This is Williams gas. I hate Williams gas. They were in our little township, Franklin. As it turned out, well, half the roof blew off, and people felt it 3 miles away. Yeah, and as it turned out, we later found out, things blew up inside the compressor station also. As we found out afterwards, the very next day, they started pumping gas again. They didn't wait for DEP to what their finding was. They didn't wait for anything. They did what they wanted to do. And to me, it's like the Old West mentality. You do what you want to do, and these companies are just doing what they want to do because they have more lawyers than the rest of us, and of course the money and so on. I found this time after time. This was the thing that kind of made me, I want to get out of here, because they started pumping gas the next day. It didn't matter about anything else. The main thing was it's a Wild West mentality. So it happened in Dimmick first, and then we lived in Franklin Township. And as it turned, small township, second-class township, less than 1,000 people, 900 and some people. I was an auditor there for 6 years until recently. Their first inroad to our township was one of the supervisor's family. There was a gigantic well pad on their place. This was the start of it. You know, these companies are just so nefarious. They're so knowledgeable about how to, you know, how to tweak what people think and about our desire for money and so on. So before we knew, anybody knew what was happening, one of the township supervisors, who was a pretty good guy, on his family's land, his brother's land, just a gigantic well pad. That was the start. Then more came in our area. In Franklin Forks, you may have heard about Franklin Forks, the Mannings there. Their water was contaminated, but because it was at a distance that was supposedly beyond what's so-called officially said the gas methane can travel, because theirs was beyond that distance, like 4,000 feet, instead of just as a guess 2,500 feet.
Right. The good neighbor policy.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So their water went bad, and there was only 2 people who offered them clean water. We went over and offered, and I found out one other family did. 100 years ago, if somebody had bad water, everybody would have gone in. What can we do? Can we bring you water? You can have our place and get blah, blah, blah. So this doesn't happen because I'm going to finish my little spiel with something positive. It's still a negative thing. The money involved. I was at township meetings where Vera Scroggins was photographing it, which you're allowed to do. It's the government. It's our money and stuff.
For now, you're not.
Yeah.
What's that?
They're trying to make it illegal to photograph.
Yeah. I'm going to finish up. But they knew she was coming. They called her a troublemaker. So she goes to the meeting and she whips out her camera. And like 5 big burly guys stood up in front of her. You know, like, there wasn't violence, but there was 5 big guys who stood in front of her, so her camera, she couldn't take pictures. And I knew some of these guys, and I still like them. The venom that was there, this is my outlook, I don't know if Art would say the same thing. And I know these guys, and I care for them. But the venom that was there, just because she wanted to take pictures of what, you know, this is democracy. There's always 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. She had her side. They didn't want anything to happen. The other thing that I thought was negative, my last negative thing, is churches. Like when I was raised, God is everywhere, everything is God. That includes all this. And I think the churches have forgotten that they are stewards of all this. You know, and since we since we don't understand all this yet, you know, to try to dominate it, and I kind of fault churches. I do fault churches for not being more vigilant and more stewardshipy in their outlook. So thanks for letting me talk. I understand a protest. I understand being against things, and I can tell that all of us are for things also. I don't want to be just against like everybody here. So I'm going to give my just quick little spiel about what is positive. I've been in agriculture most of my life, and as you know, agriculture has been Monsanto. Agriculture is now based on fossil fuel instead of the sun. Agriculture should be solar powered, not fossil fuel powered. But I think agriculture is one of the solutions. The word economy nowadays means what are the big Dow Jones companies doing? When people talk about retirement, their retirement is based on these companies. Sometimes things are really simple. They're not easy, but they're simple. Economy, food, clothing, shelter, all three of those can come from land, and you start locally. You start taking some money out of the equation, you share, you trade, you form little groups that you get together and spin, and clothing, the animals that come there, the flax that you grow, not grown flax, it grows pretty darn well in Pennsylvania. You start locally, I sound like I'm preaching. You start locally with food, clothing, and shelter, management of the woods for shelter. You do all this locally, and then what by chance you can't do locally, then you go to regionally.
Right.
Then you go nationally, and if you have to, you go internationally. The more, there's a great book put out by Acres magazine. It talks about fairness for farms and the war machine. If these three things are done locally through agriculture, horticulture, and so on, the money gets spent in the community, stays in the community, and maybe you don't have to go to work 40 hours a week. Maybe you don't need to earn so much darn money because your dentist is being taken care of because there's an agreement, or your construction needs, and so on. I think that's about it.
Yep. Buy local. That's my soapbox.
Next gentleman we have is Dan Gallagher, who I've never met, although I've had your email and we talked.
Right.
And Dan's from Ephrata?
Ephrata.
I'm sorry. I always say Ephrata. And so we are happy to have Dan, and you are representing
Right, the Lancaster Green Party.
Lancaster Green.
Yes.
Okay?
And I wrote a few little notes sitting over here.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Because I'm not a speech maker. And I really appreciate all the things that you've said, and Jerry's a big inspiration for me. You know, I've been involved in some of the groups with him. And you know, I think about why we're here and what are the things. You know, we mentioned the 5 points, the 5 demands that we're having for the DEP to do some things to protect our air, land, water, and I think it was at the 350.org, the protest against the XL pipeline, where there were some people that said, there's really 3 aspects to our activity involving the environment and sustainability and looking forward and doing the right thing. And there's things like political activism, like we're doing today. There's things like education, getting, as you said earlier, go talk to your neighbors, get out of your comfort zone, do something like go to the borough council meeting, and I've done some of that in the past, and it's not very fun. It's pretty boring. But if you want to get something done, you have to do those types of things, and it's not a party, and a lot of people just want to have their party and do the things that they want to do, but people here have made sacrifices, and that's what it's about. So political activism, education, and I think another piece of it, and that's probably what I try to share, a little different perspective, is what personal things can we do to really live the way, live the, act that, walk the walk,
Right.
instead of just talking the talk. And that's basically what I want to go over. And I have this, this shirt that says "Recovered Traditional Consumer," and I think we're all going through this process of, how do we get out of the consumerism lifestyle that we've had for I don't know, since World War II or many, a couple generations anyway in this country, where we've said, hey, more is better. Let's keep buying, and let's keep forgetting that there are consequences for the things that we're buying and doing. And so I just wanted to, I wrote some things down while I was having a little coffee this morning. And I have an electric car. So earlier this morning, I stopped actually at Hershey, and they have, the Hershey's Chocolate World, not far from here. Families with kids were unloading their minivans, their SUVs, strollers popped out, kids went running from their parents toward the massive brown sugary mountains known as chocolate. Smiles of glee and gluttony both adorned the faces I saw inside the store. I bought a coffee, guilty of consuming just like the rest. I wish I at least had brought my mug. But alas, aside from my own will, my own realization that this was the right thing to do, there was no incentive for me to do that. And on the contrary, everything in our world, the media, our friends, our roads, our stores, our neighborhoods, they're geared for us to consume more. So this realization has been with me as an undercurrent, really, for most of my life. It's an undercurrent because like the rest of us, my main drive was to succeed, to do well in life. I didn't really think about the natural systems around us. We live in America. That's who was I to change that? Swim against it, fight, think beyond those basic assumptions. I exaggerate that a little bit. I grew up in California where we had the energy crisis. We threw darts at the Ayatollah, in the 70s, and I was quite aware that energy independence was really a thing that was important. And it didn't really. I wasn't active with it. I tried to be efficient. I tried to really wanted to own solar panels one day, but it wasn't until 2008 that I read a book called Affluenza. I don't know if others have heard about it. It's a really neat book because it takes all the things that we don't really think about and connects them all together through this consumerist disease that they name affluenza. And we have this corporate dominated society, how we shop, how we get entertainment, what messages are given to us in our media, how do we view our own communities, what is our political system. All these things are affected, and ultimately they put pressure and they destroy our natural environment, and that's something that book Affluenza really got me thinking about this connections. We can't just keep going. We can't just keep growing. And so it led me to other books like Voluntary Simplicity by Joan Elgin, When Corporations Rule the World by David Corton. I just kept reading. I got into a publication called Yes. I got into Transition Lancaster, Sierra Club, and I just kept finding out about things. At the same time, I'm a dad. I have 2 young kids. I have a job, and it's hard to balance those kinds of things. But at the same time, I was meeting really interesting people, going to protests, and I really felt like this is the right thing to do. And I think Elaine Ash, I remember she said at one of those things, it's a lot of work, pain, but it's so much better at night. That's a quote I really remember, and I think it's really great to think about it in those terms, because it's a sacrifice. We are getting something back. So personally, I try to act upon those new ideas. We put solar panels on our home, installed geothermal, made home improvement changes. Like I said, I have an electric car that I try to drive most of the time. I'm the chair of our Lancaster Green Party in Lancaster, but very small, but we're still trying to be active in things like getting representation in our government that's not the two larger parties. I think a third party is really key in our political system because, at least in the Greens standpoint, or Greens perspective, we don't take corporate money. So that's something that I think is really important, whether or not it's a Green idea or not. Getting the money out of politics is key. And I guess just back to the fracking, really, I see fracking in the Pennsylvania as a corporate political power coalesced to shove the human rights, our environment, and our future under the bed of profit. If this bed is full of lies about job creation and uncertainty about our long-term health, so be it. Profit is its own master for now. What we can do is pull that support for these corporate political systems by voting independent or not voting at all, protesting, acting locally. Some of the things that have been said around here. Form your groups. I really like how you're saying, go locally. If you have to, go regionally. If you have to, go internationally, nationally. But try to do it locally. And I think there are a lot of traveling is a big thing that we all think is a necessity. We don't have to travel that much. There are a lot of local treasures. People don't even know the parks around them. Don't even know the neighbors that are there that are treasures in of themselves. And so I think fracking, does to our state and our communities the same as it does to our shale. It breaks up the past rock, sucks out the energy, and leaves us with a broken and soiled foundation.
Yep. Amen. Amen. All right, next we're going to switch it up a little bit here. Darree Sicher is from United Sludge Free Alliance, and Darree's on a little bit of a different angle. When we're talking about shale, a lot of people don't realize, I think a lot of people don't realize that fields are sludged, period. So we're going to let Darree talk a little bit about her focus today. It's Darree Sicher.
Thank you. Well, I wrote some things down, which probably half of them I'll kind of toss to the side right now. Since we're in front of the DEP and we know that this is happening around the state, I just want to read a little quote that my mother gave me years ago. Upton Sinclair. It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding.
Amen.
And there are a lot of good folks here, and there's a lot of good folks around the country. But a lot of people buy into a system that is not healthy for not only our communities, but our country and our world as a whole. I'm the founder of a group called United Sludge Free Alliance. We provide industry-resistant information about the health and safety concerns of applying 8 million tons of sewage sludge throughout America on not only the farmlands that grow our food, but also the false fertilizers used on parks, athletic fields, even the White House lawns, by the way, but also sold as bag fertilizers to farmers. It's high in nitrogen and phosphorus, and that's why it's marketed as a fertilizer. It's also everything that goes down the drain of every home, business, industry, wastewater treatment plant, collects it all, squeezes the liquid out, and the solid that's remaining is what's called sewage sludge. Clean Water Act got us to stop dumping that in the ocean because it was poisoning the ocean. The industry changed the name from sewage sludge to biosolids because sewage sludge sounds so sewagey. And by changing it to biosolids, they could market it as a fertilizer. So I'd just like to tie in so many of the things that we heard today. First of all, I'm where Michael wandered in, but I'm where Michael was 35 years ago. My parents were activists. I maybe am the only person who grew up living with full activists, people who were involved in the civil rights movements, the miners' strikes, and things like protecting some of our other democratic rights, like maybe not the right to bear arms, but the right of freedom of the press, freedom of speech. And And this is what democracy looks like. And that's the value of all of us gathering, not only here, but the other DEP sites, and going to places like Washington and speaking up and getting involved. So my feeling is the reason we're here at the DEP is because their charge is Department of Environmental Protection, not don't expect protection.
Yep.
The EPA's charge is environmental protection, not every pollutant accepted. My organization provides information that is useful for not only throughout the nation but internationally about the health and safety concerns of pouring. Not only, it's not just a human turd, it's industrial waste, it's pharmaceuticals, it's chemicals and toxins, and pouring that where our food grows is ultimately going to be our downfall. Pouring these industrial solvents where our food and water comes from will be our downfall. And what I find is that our website is useful anywhere around the country. So in the last year, I've been contacted by people from California, Texas, Virginia, including Hawaii and Alaska, and the value of providing that information so communities can defend themselves. That's what democracy is, and that's what we're expecting from our DEP and our EPA. What I constantly hear is people saying, I thought somebody was looking out for me.
No.
I thought the DEP or the EPA was there for me, and they weren't. The problem with the bureaucracy and the bureaucratic monster is you end up with a lot of people being paid by my taxes to push pencils, not to look out for me. When the DEP is called out, and Marie and I were at a meeting a month or so ago, and we're in a room of 30 people, and they're being disingenuous and saying, we never get calls that it's about sludge, it's always about pig manure. And I'm thinking, you've got 30 people in here who don't want this in their communities, but they have no right to it. And that's the problem, and the problem with the way the DEP is set up now. People like Steve, who got involved because they cared about the environment, are crushed by the bureaucracy and the machine. And just to add on to, when agribusiness took over from agriculture, you lost the culture of farming, and it was prostituted to the business of farming. It was prostituted to the Monsantos of the world, rather than farmers who I talk to who say, I don't know what's right or wrong about this biosolid stuff. I want to ride on my tractor. I want to take care of my animals.
Yep.
So why should farmers have to wonder if the man who's marketing a nitrogen and phosphorus is also marketing the radiation in the nitrogen and phosphorus? All of this is tied together. Fracking, CAFOs, and sewage sludge, they're all tied together because it's about corporate prostituting our rights, corporate prostituting what should be an environmental protection agency. It's not the Department of Environmental Prostitution. And that's what has happened. In my studies, I found 5 wastewater treatment plants in northern Pennsylvania that were accepting fracking flowback, including the list of the things like barium and strontium and things that we know are carcinogenic. They're accepting the fracking flowback. 5 wastewater treatment plants that also marketed sewage sludge and gave it to farmers. How could they do that? Because they only test for 10 elements. 10. The EPA regulates 9 elements nationally. Every state has the right to make stricter regulations. An underwhelming act of protection, the DEP added 1 more element. So they don't test for barium. So then they can say, everything we test for is fine.
We're not looking.
And yet I have, on our website, we have not only a write-up about each approach, but we also have the actual articles that you can read. So I have actual studies from Cornell. I have actual studies from Yale. So when the industry tells me that my work's not relevant, I'm not working with the Ashna Murdy School of Who. These are very relevant and respected organizations. They tend to be more industry resistant. Quite frankly, I don't use Penn State because Joe Paterno's son is Syntegro's lobbyist, the largest sludge hauler in the United States. owned by the same company that owns Halliburton. So that gives you an idea of the level of money in this. And I just want to mention, because you were talking about water, you know, 40% of the U.S. population's within a one-day drive of Pennsylvania. 40% of the U.S. population. And millions rely on the watershed. I just jotted these things down. On our eastern border, the Delaware River creates a watershed that supplies 10% of America's water. 10%. So when you are fracking in that area, you are then affecting 10% of America's water. 17 million people rely on the Delaware River watershed. And that includes New York City, New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia. That goes down into the Delaware and out into the ocean. Cutting Pennsylvania right through the middle, Susquehanna River watershed, which is right here in Harrisburg. The Susquehanna ends in the Chesapeake Bay. So the Chesapeake Bay has over 16.6 million people in 6 states that rely on that watershed. So when they're fracking in the northern part of the Susquehanna River, they're fracking you up. And with 16.6 million people relying on that watershed, it's about time the EPA and the DEP take their job seriously. And finally, as far as Pennsylvania and the DEP, our western border is the Ohio River Basin. That covers 204,000 square miles and encompasses 14 states, including Pittsburgh's 1 million residents. So we are a water state. Thank you for mentioning that. The industry drooled at the idea that they could prostitute Pennsylvania. And quite frankly, the other thing to be aware of is the big push to privatize our wastewater treatment plants and our water industry, because then the fracking will purchase the water from under us and raise our waste and our water treatment prices. Once you're privatized, you're also not beholden to the public system. The public wastewater treatment plants have to keep to a certain level. Privatization, and I mentioned this to wastewater treatment plants. So being aware that there's a very big push in Pennsylvania to privatize our wastewater treatment facilities, because then we will be competing with the fracking industry. So how this all relates to sewage sludge is that if we're using sewage sludge on our food and water supply, we will ultimately pay the price. The DEP needs to stand up and do their job.
It's going good. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Can I cut you? Can you hold that thought right now? All right, everybody, Ron Gola is on the phone, and I promised him we were going to all call him up and tell him thank you and we love him. So ready? 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Love you. Sorry.
All right, I'm happy being upstaged by somebody so special.
He said back at you.
So I don't know. I don't want to drag on too long, but I was thinking I had 10 minutes. So the variable with 8 million tons of sewage sludge, which is 60% of all of the U.S. Sewage from America. What else do we do with it? I was thrilled to get an intern from Albright this year, and we have been categorizing the technologies that have been used around the world for ways to use wastewater sewage sludge as alternative fuel. Certainly the thing to be cautious of is to not get in the situation we are with the Clean Water Act, where you went out of the frying pan into the fire. We stopped ocean dumping, then we started land dumping. So with those technologies, though, we found Germany and Sweden head the pack with ways to use sewage as an alternative fuel. Talk about a renewable resource. You will never run out of that.
As long as we are here.
We need electric. Eat more prunes. I don't care. I visited a waste to hydrogen plant in California in October, but there's also things called plasma arc, hydrogen, methane digesting, things like that. All of those have a pro and con. And what we're doing is creating a good, strong piece of work so that you as citizens can also market to your own communities. This is what I'd like to see. This is the plus, this is the minus. So we're trying to go somewhere between the naysayers and the industry's marketing work and find what's the plus and minus and what can we do that's different than what we're doing. But for instance, I read an article about a mayor in Rexburg, Idaho. You may not think that Rexburg, Idaho would be the mecca of progressive thinking, but apparently they are. And he went abroad to Germany, and they've just signed a contract, $5 million contract, payback's 5 years. And then they have a waste-to-energy plant that they have contracted with all of the surrounding communities. All the waste will come in. They're creating their own electric source. That'll be up and running in the next 2 years. So there are options of fracking. There are options of sewage sludge, and there are options of CAFOs. If we bring it local, we have more control. If we support our local farmers, the farmers support us. And just as a variable, in Pennsylvania, the counties with the most permits to apply sewage sludge are Berks, Lancaster, and York, where we have over 600 farms that are permitted to apply sewage sludge in the community. We import from 5 states, so it's not a local turd. We're bringing stuff in from Dover. What do you think they put in Dover Air Force Base waste that we shouldn't put on our field?
Right.
What do you think New York City is sending us? So that's why we need to change this, because we need to protect farming in Pennsylvania and throughout the nation. I'm very excited about the work that our organization's done and the way we've been able to help communities across the country be able to at least educate themselves as a first step. And the next step is to defend yourself. The industry